everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
We're looking at the iconic 60s series, The Munsters.
This family sitcom spoofs the famous Universal monsters as an average American family, since they believe they are just like everyone else.
Yes, and then they meet people and then they run screaming.
Now, both of us have seen this show as a result of reruns.
Yeah.
And I was always wondering, what episodes have I not seen, and what was it like to watch this show as it aired originally. So about 5 years ago, probably, possibly 6, on Amazon they had the entire Munsters collection for sale. It was every episode, both seasons, plus all the movies that were made to go with it. Plus, there used to be a channel called Channel A&E still exists, but their specialty was biographies. And during the time they aired biographies, they had a biography for each of the stars of this show, including Eddie and the show itself. So we jumped on it for $30. It was a steal, and we got to actually see this entire series, all the movies and everything as they originally aired. And if it's still available there, and if you love this show like we do, this is a fantastic buy. Check it out on Amazon.
Yes, it's a really, really fun and kooky series.
And for a while, it was on Netflix.
And then they removed it.
Right.
Not sure why, if it was the rights or because they had newer stuff on there and it slowly got replaced. But this show ran for 2 seasons, and unfortunately it was canceled when they had
I think
Batman.
it was 1964 to 1966.
Yeah, and with the premiere of Adam West's Batman, which is a show in color, and the Munsters was in black and white, that show started to get more viewership, and then the Munsters automatically canceled.
Right. And I always wonder what better legacy would we have now, because this one is great. If this show had been able to stay on a few more years, I can't imagine the kookiness and more fun that we'd have in more episodes.
Right.
But it was very different at the time. We watched, as we mentioned, the biography, and there wasn't another show like it, and there wasn't another show that had all these different monsters together. They had to get permission from Universal and other studios who had the rights on these movies, and they gladly gave it to them.
Right.
And they had the little nuclear family with a mom, a dad, a son, and then they had a grandparent, and they had a niece who was considered to be the ugly one because she was abnormal looking, which means she looked like we do.
Right. But all of the monsters are just the Universal monsters. Herman was Frankenstein's monster. Lily was Bride of Frankenstein. Grandpa was Dracula. Eddie was the Wolf Man or Wolf Boy. And then Marilyn was Marilyn.
Yes.
Marilyn Monroe, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what they said she was based off of. And it was so funny, the things that they would say to her. And she was believing them and thinking that she was truly an ugly duckling and that she would never get a man, when all the time she had men that wanted to date her, but they would run whenever they saw the rest of her family.
Right. And that would always be the running gag. Everyone, and all of a sudden they would see her, and it would always be like some sort of build-up. They would see Lily, and they'd be like, oh, okay. Then they would see the grandpa, and then they would start getting weird out. Then they would be out Eddie, and then they started getting scared. Then they saw Herman, and they would be out the door, and they would fly, and they would crush things just to get away from them and say, oh, Uncle Herman, what's wrong with me? Like, you poor dear. It's like, wait, if you're running away, how come everything gets to your house to run away?
Now, I wonder why they didn't decide to go ahead and shoot the series in color after the competition from Batman, because as we watched on the DVD set, the premiere, or the pilot, I should say,
the original pilot
was in color.
Yes, the original pilot
with some different people, and then they went to black and white because it was cheaper. But you would think they always had the option to go to color after the competition came.
Yeah,
but I
assume
have
that
to
too.
say the nostalgia of it, and what makes it so much fun to watch, is that it's in black and white.
True.
You get to use your imagination for the colors and different things you can't see.
Yeah, because they actually did make a colorized episode later.
And movies.
Yeah, they had 2 colorized movies and 1 colorized episode they did while they were getting a family picture. And it was a little odd seeing them in color because you were so used to seeing them in black and white, which was the homage to the old movies. So seeing them in color was a little weird. And then, like you said, we had the 2 movies, which was Munsters Go Home, which was sort of like the farewell movie to the show.
Which also starred in, and one of the characters was Chris Pine's dad, who played her love interest.
For like her 50th love interest, I guess.
I should say Jack Frost.
Right.
Jack Frost, Star Trek, in Wonder Woman. You guys know who he is. But his dad is in here. And he looks just like his dad when he was really young. So
right.
That was fun.
And then they had the Munsters Revenge, which was an attempt to bring back the show. But at the time, what's his name? Pat? No, not Pat. Who's the guy that played Herman? Fred Gwynn. Fred Gwynn. He passed away, so they couldn't get him later on, but they had just about everybody for there. They couldn't get Marilyn back because both of the people that played her left, and one they got rid of, and the one that played Eddie was too grown to play Eddie again.
Well, no, they didn't get rid of either Marilyn. The first Marilyn decided she didn't want to be in Hollywood. She wanted to be married, and she really missed her fiance. So she left, they let her out of her contract, and they got a replacement. And they didn't get rid of her. She also left.
Oh, okay.
So neither of them were fired. They were both great at their jobs. They were saying their personalities were terrific, and they all got along wonderfully. So no one was fired.
Okay,
actually, they both chose to leave.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. And for the episodes themselves, they were really, really fun and crazy. They were supposed to be the parody of the family sitcom. Instead of having normal, mundane stuff, they would get into bizarre things because of who they were. They live in this, looks like a haunted house, like all these normal houses, this one giant haunted, rickety house, and then people be afraid to go over. The mailman didn't want to deliver their mail to them. The neighbors were terrified of them. Like, these are some weird monsters.
And it was always only raining
on them. Yeah. And every time it was starting, oh dear, the weather's getting bad. Don't let us spoil your day.
Now here's a fun fact, and I know most of you, like I did not watch Desperate Housewives when it was on. However, the house from Desperate Housewives, the main house, is the same house that the Munsters was filmed at.
Oh, cool. And as for the actors, before we get into more of the episodes, the actors, you got to point out, we already mentioned Fred Gwynn as Herman.
Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis were actually on a show prior to this that our Nana watched called Car 54, Where Are You? I think that was the name
I think
of it.
so.
And we got to actually watch some of these episodes when they had like a marathon on one of the retro channels. And they were hilarious on this show, which explains why they worked so well together on this show.
Right.
So both of them were actually TV stars before getting cast for the Munsters.
Right. They had Yvonne DiCarlo as Lily.
And Yvonne DiCarlo was actually a Hollywood movie star.
Yes.
Whom they didn't think would take the role because she was just a big known star. She was beautiful. She was a triple threat. She could sing, she could dance, she could act. Well, I guess a quadruple threat because she also was beautiful and model. But she took the role. And I can't picture anyone else as her.
Right.
With all the people who they had thought about casting, but they settled on wanting her.
Right. And we already mentioned, there's Al Lewis, as we mentioned, on Car 54 is playing the grandpa, and we have Beverly Owen and Pat Priest play Marilyn, respectively.
Right.
And then Butch Patrick was Eddie Munster. And to this day,
no one calls him anything but Eddie Munster.
Yeah. Even when he was on a court show trying to get the rights back to the Munsters website years ago, even on that show, the announcer said, Eddie Munster, a.k.a. Butch Patrick, and they make all these Munster puns, and it said, you don't mind, but can we look at a clip before we start the case? And they showed a clip of it on TV, and then eventually he said, okay, no, we're not here for that, we need to get to the case, but they were just having a blast that he was there.
And he actually, in the late 90s, had a song that actually made it to Billboard about whatever happened to Eddie, the kid from Mockingbird Lane, and it was released during Halloween. But I think what I really like most when we're talking about the stars is that all of them appreciated the success. They were grateful for the show. They were grateful for their fans. And you never, when you watch a biography, they were always happy to talk to their fans, see their fans. They did massive touring and promoting of the show. And they had the best marketing for products for this show. I mean, everything you could imagine. This is the way people that have the shows now, you should be doing marketing like it was done for the Munsters.
Yes.
But I think you could tell watching the show they loved their job. They had a lot of fun. They respected each other. They loved each other. And all of these wonderful traits and characteristics came through in their characters. characters' performances.
Right.
And I believe that is the main reason why this show, how many years is 64, 74, 84, 94, 2014, 55 years later, people are still watching this show.
Right.
Not only, by buying this series, but also this show is still aired on retro channels every single day, 2 episodes.
Yes.
For an hour.
Right. So it's almost like Cartoon Network does with Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes. They still have that shout out to the retro stuff. As for the episodes themselves, like we said, they're really outlandish.
And we also have to mention that the only ones, both Marilyn's and Butch Patrick are still alive for the people who starred in the show.
Yeah.
All of the guest stars that were older have now passed. Yeah. All the younger guest stars are still alive.
Yeah, so I was actually going to mention that almost every episode had a guest star. But it looks like they kind of stopped at the second season because you could see them attempting to compete with Batman. Because the first season, like I said, had that really kookiness and weirdness. Everyone terrified of them. You could tell there was a change in season 2 as it got further down. There were fewer guest stars. They started going through more running gags and using the same jokes, and then they stopped using the gag of people running away. They would either just be creeped out, or they would have gangsters or the bad guys, and they kept ripping them off, and they would kept try to take them on. They weren't even scared anymore. They were like, "Oh no, this guy's nothing. I can take him on," which is a bad foreshadowing for now.
Which took away part of the fun. I mean, the reactions to the people just not being used to them was part of what made it hilarious. And I love that they were always good-natured. And Lily would say, you have to, understand and give them sympathy and be empathetic.
Right.
And she would say, everyone's not as beautiful as they are as fortunate as they were. And it was hilarious. And then there were episodes where the people who were afraid of them, they didn't understand that they were afraid of them, and they would end up helping these people, and these people would be shocked they were helping them and really cared. And then some of the attitudes for some of the people would change toward them. But this is just a great show. I mean, it had to be fun to sit and watch this every week when it originally aired. And the brilliance in the writing, in the timing of the comedy, and again, making it what was considered to be a nuclear family at that time. It was just one of the most perfect shows, I think, that ever aired on TV.
Yes.
And I'm just so grateful that we're able to still enjoy it. And I'm grateful not only that I got to see it as a child in reruns, but you got to see it not only in reruns, but also with this compilation for the entire series and everything.
Right. And like we said, the 2 movies, we really loved the Munster Go Home, where they went to England for an inheritance, and their crazy cousins, they were bat crazy. They were kind of like the polar opposite of them. Right. They were human, but they were crazy. They were trying to axe them out.
They were arrogant, and they were mean, and they were sneaky, conniving.
Right. They were the complete opposite of them. Those are American cousins, and it's like, what the heck? And then Munsters Revenge, which was more grounded, where 2 of them were framed for stealing something in a museum, and then the police were looking for them. Then they tried to introduce a new character. They were trying to bring back the show, and they introduced a new character who was Cousin Phantom, who sang just about all of his lines, which I don't know how long that will be before you got irritated, but they at least tried.
So we also need to mention, go ahead. You were going to say one more thing.
Before
we get to the
reboot.
The theme song itself is iconic. It was iconic when it originally came out, and still, all these decades later, soon as someone plays that song or puts it on, you start dancing, and you can't help but think of this television show and start smiling and be filled with joy. They've really left behind a legacy of fun and joy and love. And I'm sure this is not what they expected. I'm positive they never dreamt in a million years that long after their passing, that 55 years later, this show is still enjoyed in its entirety. And I think one thing that makes it a standout, there are very few shows that you can watch over and over again, and you laugh at them like you've never seen them before, and you don't tire of it. Well, The Munsters is one of these shows. We have seen these episodes so much. I've seen them way more than you.
Yes.
And I still watch every episode like it's new and it's fun, and it can't get funnier. And it's a testament again to the filming, production, directing, the acting, the casting, the writing.
everybody.
Again, it is one of the most perfect shows ever created.
Right.
So now let's get to attempts to reboot this.
Yes.
Including an animated show that we also got to watch the pilot for.
Yeah, it was a short-lived one. It was sort of like a spin-off called The Mini Munsters. The only one that could get back was Al Lewis, and they attempted to do a little hand-drawn animated episode, and it took place years later because Eddie was a teenager now instead of a little kid, and it was okay, but it was missing a lot of that magic. Grandpa was fine because one, it was still him, and two, the writing for him still felt the same. Then they did The Munsters Today, which had a whole new cast, which was supposed to be them in what was at the time modern day and in color, with guest stars from the remaining actors, which didn't last.
And they also had Fred Gwynn, Al Lewis, and Yvonne DiCarlo return, but they had a younger Marilyn with someone who was popular at that time. And they had, of course, someone else playing Eddie. And because that original cast wasn't together, and we knew it was impossible because, again, Eddie was an adult and so forth, I think they should have just casted him as an adult and let him be the adult child instead of an adult, you know, trying to get a small kid. It didn't work. As you said before, the magic wasn't there. I think they should have gone ahead, let it age up, kept the original Marilyn, the second Marilyn, let her come back, and let Butch Patrick come back as an adult kid who still lived at home and taking it from there. But it, as you mentioned, it was we were happy to see that they had another opportunity, that they'd had work again, but it just wasn't the same.
And then the last thing they have announced they're going to do another reboot. But before we get to that, really quick, is Mockingbird Lane, which came on in 2012. It was a television special for Halloween, and they wanted to be like another reboot, but taking a much more darker turn for the Munsters.
It was directed by Bryan Singer, which we need to mention, who hadn't done television before, and I think hasn't done television again. It
was a 1-hour drama, and they wanted to make it a horror comedy. And then what would make it funny is just how sadistic or creepy the monsters were, rather than how friendly they were. And no one got to see, and many people didn't get to see that because they were too terrified. And here, they're very unassuming. They look very human, but when it gets to night, they become monsters.
Now, the cast for this series starred Jerry O'Connell, Portia de Rossi, Charity Wakefield, Mason Cook, and Eddie Izzard. I was familiar with Jerry O'Connell, Portia de Rossi, and Eddie Izzard, but not the other two. What made this show very disturbing were things that they decided they should do as monsters. They were no longer the average American family. They were almost like serial killer type characters.
That's what
and it wasn't funny. It was, as you mentioned, it was disturbing, and to me it was a discredit and an insult to the original series and cast.
And for here, like I said, Herman looks absolutely normal. They even kind of joked with him in his first appearance. He looked in the shadow, he looked like the monster. When he came to the light, he was human. He's actually part zombie too, because they take out people, I guess, that people won't miss, and then use their parts for Herman because he's fallen apart, which was just like one of the most disturbing things ever seen on TV. Then they had Lily Munster, who was, I guess, almost normal. I guess she was trying to make her act like she was on the Addams Family, and she had control over spiders.
The Addams Family was also fun.
So I think they're trying to make her. I think they're trying to make her like Morticia Addams, and she did a bunch of stuff with spiders, and everyone was attracted to her, and she was very quiet and stuff. And then they had Marilyn, who was sort of normal. She looked normal, but she sort of had this creepy undertone about her.
And a dark secret. And also the one who played Grandpa, Eddie Izzard, he was disturbing because he would make cookies for the neighbors and put his own blood in it, and that in no way, shape, or form was funny. It just wasn't funny. And then, of course, they had the Mason Cook, who played a young Eddie. And I think, again, another problem with this series, besides the series itself, is trying to have another young Eddie. They should have let Eddie just grow up and being an adult and taking it from that viewpoint rather than trying to recreate that cast. For those of you who like this type of show, you may love it. And I think instead of trying to recreate the monsters, they should have just taken this concept and made a whole new show. And then I think it would have had a following with people who appreciate this type of
right.
this genre.
Right, because they tried to have like an origin story for the
Right.
monsters, like they're first buying the house. Eddie doesn't know he's a werewolf. They found out Grandpa's taking people out because he likes to eat people, and since they're going to have all this,
there was a market for it, but you tried to make it a Munsters reboot, and it should have just been its own show.
Right.
And I believe they would have had an audience that liked this genre and would have appreciated it, and it would have stayed on.
Right. So
they shouldn't have tried to reinvent the monster well.
Right. So let's hope that the new reboot they do is gonna. They said it's going to stay the family comedy that it should have been before. So let's hope that they keep to their word and that they at least do a good job of having the monsters in modern day.
Well, we'll give it a chance, absolutely.
Yes.
So, any of you out there who have seen it, regardless of your age, if you saw it originally, we really would like to hear from you.
Yes.
What your experience was in watching originally, and if you saw it as we did, and on reruns on TV and the series DVDs, comment and let us know what you love about it. If you didn't like it, why? And if you're excited about it possibly coming back and them doing a successful reboot of this series, we can't wait to hear from you because, again, this is one of those rare things that you just don't get tired of watching, and something that Rascal and I absolutely love watching together repeatedly over and over. But we generally wait now until the month of October, which is why we have this podcast and sharing it with you.
Right. So thank you so much for watching. And tune in next time for our next spooky podcast.
One more thing I'd like to mention, there are some people out there who are still doing some awesome fan art for the Munsters. Go to Tumblr, go to DeviantArt, type in the Munsters, and you will see some fantastic fan art that's being done by teens and kids now that are really appreciating this series.
Right. So, I'm Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mama Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace. Darn, 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 darn.
Herman, shut up!
Flashing lights, trying to walk around, man, who the hell are you? What you wanna do? My man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. Hit her in my dreams, she was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Plucking sunlight from the sky in my pocket, give it to you later on in the